Mm-hmm.
Still here.
Yes, okay. Are you there? If my microphone seems to be working here. Shaun, are you there?
I'm there. I'm there. But the only
You're-
thing I'll have to say is that I'll need to go in like 40 minutes or so because I'll need to start preparing for work. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, I tell you what, we'll all keep track of the clock then.
Now, I will, but you guys don't interrupt on my accord. You guys continue.
All right. Well, both of you are relatively new students. And so the first thing that we should do is to check in with how's your practice question, because that's generally the first thing that happens, even though it may not be phrased that way. But it's always that's the first question. So Ronnie, how's your practice?
Well, up ups and downs. Two weeks ago, I had my uptake, everything going well, and but typically when I get to the top of my game, and when when things starts to dissolve into vibrations, and I just like hit a wall, and then the next day I'm back in dullness and suffering. It's like a 2 week cycle. I get up to the best and just a bit beyond, and then the next week I'm there's anxiety, shitty emotions in general, uh,
Uh-huh.
severe tiredness.
Okay. Now, the first question that I would ask you about that would be, um, is this kind of old stuff that you've not? Never mind about the dissolving part. That's kind of new. But basically, the anxiety that goes up and down. Is this some new knowledge that you have about an old situation, or is this newfound down anxiety that's being manufactured kind of this month?
No, a few months ago when I first experienced it, it was like I had a very deep period, so I got to investigate quite closely, and I have thought about exploring versus investigation since last. Um, I think
Yes.
investigation is just exploration with an X on the map.
Let's call it an investigation. Has a little bit more of a method. It's almost like exploring, but you took a map with you.
Yeah, exploring with an X marked on the map. So
All right.
I don't know what to find, but I know where to find it. And so I did that, and it was like I found a base continual feeling of tension or anxiety, physical feeling, and it has stuck
Okay.
around all time since.
All right. What I would suggest, and perhaps you'll agree with me, that this anxiety that you're beginning to experience now is actually something that's been there, both up and down, sometimes there, sometimes not there, but that you weren't paying much attention to it.
Yes,
But
I
that,
fully agree.
and that now you're starting to pay attention to it and you don't like it.
No, I don't like it.
All right. Okay.
on, on on the cushion, it's okay. I have no issues with it there, but it colors my day.
Yes. Let us say that you're not liking it colors things.
Yeah, that's of course. That's yes.
All right, all right. Let's leave that there. All right, let's go, John. How is your practice?
Sorry, kind of got cut off. It was me, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
How is your practice?
Um, well, for the last week, it's kind of been funny because up until Friday, the tips you gave me, yeah, they made me feel much more in control, let's say. I a lot of preoccupation got shed off, kind of, and I started to worry less about what day it is and what should I do. That kind of came to a swift halt yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
because I kind of was feeling in a foul mood all day without being able to shake it, without even wanting to practice. That was the only day. Yesterday was the only day that I didn't practice, even though the whole week was kind of busy. Today I woke up kind of feeling much better. So in retrospect, I think it's mostly due to the fact that I've been sleeping much less this last week, and it kind of caught up with me Saturday. But otherwise, it's been going really great. I just kind of still feel pressured by how long I should practice, how often I should practice. And even though I know I shouldn't put shoulds on this, I kind of feel that I should kind of have some kind of order to my practice and not just practice whenever I feel like it.
All right. Okay. So now we've made the connection. So both of you are ready for the same talk at the same time, which is what I was suspicious of.
Uh,
And that basically what that is that it's step 10 of Anapanasati. It's something quite important. And yet many students gloss right over it. This step 10 is gladdening the mind to intentionally see success, small successes, when they occur, and that most of the successes that we're going to have is by seeing, because that's the first primary job, is to see what's going on. And neither one of you are really congratulating yourselves quite enough for the fact that both of you are beginning to see what's going on. And that's the first step to being able to do something about it. But we don't want to just see something and then take a knife to it. We want to really inspect things very well before we figure out what to do. It's sort of like doing a really full investigation, like a medical diagnosis, so that we really figure out exactly what's going on. And that primarily, um, let us say it like this, it it seems to me over many years of working with many students at many levels, we all start with the basic same mistake. And that mistake was made in childhood when we take the victim's position of being at the state of one down, everybody's bigger than we are. When we're really little, we can't dress ourselves. And so we automatically see ourselves as in need of assistance. We're taken to school. And then, in some sort of more or less authoritarian system, each of us as a child is set down and told what to do. Someone else is in charge. Always the authority figures are around. And so we begin to build up habits associated with us and our authority figures and the relationship between us and our authority figures. And in fact, this stuff is really deeply buried in the mind as an instinct. It's an instinctual way. It's part of our sociology or even the nesting instinct of how to get along in this situation of me being a child dealing with adults. And when we get sufficiently into that habit, even as we grow up, we will still maintain that child or victim's position. And so we still relate to the world as if it were some sort of an authority figure, and that Freud had that nailed. He called it the superego. Eric Berne relabeled it as the apparent ego state. The Buddha is talking about it very, very directly as one of the fetters that we have to drop. The fetter of what we call attachments to rites, rules, rituals, way things should be, expectations, and all of that stuff is based on in the past. And so part of the practice is to come joyfully to this present moment, no matter what the situation is. Now, the very first situation that we describe is that we're sitting here in meditation saying, oh, what a good boy am I, and I'm watching my breath, and everything is sabai, a Thai word. It means everything is okay. And then we recognize, oh no, the mind has wandered away from the breath. Well, wait a minute. We had already said it was on the breath and now it's off the breath, and I can see that. That is normally what we do in the sense of becoming a victim again. Oh, I'm a victim of the mind in this case. The mind is not behaving the way that I thought that it should, not up to my expectations. We eventually start calling it a monkey mind. This is very famous in Buddhism, has been in Buddhism for centuries now. People have been calling it the monkey mind, the monkey mind, the monkey mind. Why? Because it does what a mind does that looks like what a monkey's doing. And that is jump from thing to thing, moving from here to here. But one of the qualities of jumping around is that it's not satisfied. Wherever it lands, it's not satisfied. The Buddha even had a story about a dog that was just laying there. I mean, he told the story because there's the example of it. And what he was noticing was that the dog would get up and circle around, perhaps circle around this or that, and then lay down again, but he wouldn't relax like a normal dog. Instead, it would start to bite itself, and then it would stand up again and circle around. And he said, okay, guys, this is what the human mind is doing all the time. We can't just let it sit and rest and settle down. And the part of the reason for that is because we have been literally forced into, let us call it an infant's army of our society, and marched forward into battle of the future without ever given the proper tools to deal with it. So here we are, babes in what we misperceive as a very dangerous world. But in fact, if we're using our adult mind, if we're really looking and seeing the situation as how it actually really is, things are actually not dangerous. Things are quite safe. And yet, look how many people are manipulated through politics into voting by making them feel bad or feel afraid or feel like they're not getting something that those immigrants or those blacks or those whites are always something else that's outside of my tribe. And so these nesting instincts wind up being tribal, so that some people don't have the same rules as we do, but almost universal across all societies. Every one of us is brought up as a victim. And basically, what this whole practice is the practice of coming out of victimhood into being a winner over and over and over again until we build it up as a habit. That's what this practice is all about. The Buddha was a lion. He was a big, tough dude, and he was a happy, big, tough dude, and he loved it. And that's why he wanted to say, hey, guys, all you have to do is get your mind straightened out. You got to get it out of the that you yourself have created and come and be an upright, happy, noble, honorable, um, intelligent individual that is integrated, a mental integration to where we don't have to have feelings that we have to suppress. because we've got a mind that's noble and clear. Well, how do we get to that state? By practicing it. By practice. Which reminds me of the old story. The man was with a violin case, and he was walking around New York kind of lost, and he asked an old Jewish kind of gentleman, "Sorry, sir, can you give me directions to Carnegie Hall?" And the old man had looked at him, and he says, "Practice, my son, practice." So that's what this is all about. Practice what? Practice to develop the very skills that you really want to have. And one of the most important skills is mindfulness, or sati, to remember. Because once you remember, then the other things become bound up with each other. And that is, with right remembering, you already have a base of right view. That's going to grow. It's going to expand. But already you have the right view, or you wouldn't be calling me. So you've already got at least that much of it nailed down. The next one is right effort, and that's what we need to start working on, in one's right effort. And these things run and circle around each other, and then the Buddha adds a fourth one, and that's right attitude, an upright attitude, rather than one that's leaning in one direction or another. And mostly the gravity of the past is pulling us in one direction or another. And so we have to remember to be here now and to see things the way that they are here now, without having to, let us say, processing it with a very, very dirty hard drive. The old hard drive that we keep putting all of the old past stuff on. All right. And both of you are accessing that old stuff and putting it into your practice. You have to catch that and make sure that, oh no, that we're going to practice correctly by this ingredient of adding joy. That's the major ingredient, because with joy, the effort becomes right effort. Without joy, then the effort is either too weak to get the job done or too strong. It's hard to find that balance point. Balance point is much easier in the sense of adding that joy. And the joy comes from success. We can manufacture it, but when we're talking about manufacturing it, we're basically talking about lighting a fuse to set off the explosion. The remembrance was lighting the fuse, but what's going to actually explode is your newfound success of seeing, aha, ha ha, I can see you, mind, wandering away from the breath. And so we begin to take joy because we can see. But that's not been your habit your whole life. Normally when you see something you don't like, you feel bad. Now we're going to start seeing things we don't like, and we'll say, I caught you. I see you, Mr. Dukkha. Because only by seeing it clearly can we grab a hold of it and yank it out. This is what it's all about. You have to have that joy, because that joy is also part of the investigation. But without joy, it's not even curiosity, it's just doubt. It's just, I don't know. But you add joy to that doubt, and it gives the quality of curiosity. It changes it from I don't know to what the hell. You can see the difference. Because one's going to go check it out. The other one is, it's too much work. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't care. And besides, I'm a victim anyway. And so we'll just leave life alone and let it, I'll try to avoid the suffering that I can see. But I'm not going to go out looking for it. Okay. But no, we're going to be lions. So that's also part of the attitude. The attitude is the attitude of a lion. The attitude of Success, the attitude of, yes, I'm going to go find those things I don't like in myself, and when I catch them, I'm going to grab them by the throat, and I'm going to say, hello. So when you have an off day, if you can do this over and over, aha, I see that I'm telling myself that this is an off day, it's a bad day. But they got half the people of the world had a good day yesterday. So it couldn't have been the day itself. The whole world could have had a good day yesterday, everybody but you. But unfortunately, a whole lot of people chose the same thing that you did and chose it yesterday to be a bad day. But when you can catch it and see, aha, I'm telling myself it's a bad day. Now all of a sudden it's not such a bad day. Because you recognize that you're actually in a way lying to yourself when you tell yourself it's a bad day. And then we can begin to inspect the feelings. Why am I telling myself it's a bad day? Oh, it's because there's something I don't like. What is it that I don't like? And there goes into the investigation now. We start asking ourselves questions about this stuff that comes up because now we're willing to look at it. And the reason that we're willing to look at it is because we're going to take charge of it. We're going to root that stuff out, and you're going to be a winner. We're not going to leave ourselves in victim's position. But that's the major teaching of the Buddha, and it's got two major qualities to it. One is that quality of can do, and the other quality is, and here's how to do it. And this here's how to do it has these four qualities of sati, right effort, right overall understanding of what's going on, and that right attitude. I can do this. All practiced over and over and over and over and over and over again. Almost as if you were laying down flooring over the top of a pit of shit that we will call the past. And when we get our practice sufficiently solid enough, then our normal day-to-day mindset will be such that as we're processing data to arrive at how we feel about things, we'll be using more new data that's appropriate, wholesome, correct, well looked at, well agreed with, and well laid down, and not anymore using so much of, well, this is the habits of the way that I used to behave. And so as we use more and more of the new layer that has to be practiced over and over and over again, it's like learning how to play a musical instrument, only this musical instrument is your whole life. It's worth practicing for. And if you practice it with right effort, you'll enjoy the practice sessions. That's what it's about, is learn to enjoy the practice sessions, because it's the practice sessions that you're learning to do that will give you the foundation. So a lot of people think that, oh, meditation is a it is a skill to be developed, but that it's way off into the future. And that I got to do this, that, and the other thing, develop paramis, or getting these jhana states, or destroy this defilement, or whatever like that. But a much better way of looking at it is that enlightenment, or what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa would call the little nibbana, is something that we fall into on occasion. The question is, do you know it when you're doing it? Do you know how to create that state? Can you continue to fall into that state? And go into that state anytime you want to, ere how short it lasts. A lot of people say, oh, I want to get into that state and stay there. No, that's not what we really need to practice. We need to practice recognizing we need to get into that state and then get into it. And hopefully, if we train well doing that over and over and over again, we'll start doing it at just the minute that we need it the most. You know, good advice is all over the place. There are good advice books written. There are philosophers. Even Socrates had good advice. Jesus had good advice. The Buddha had good advice. Buddha had really good advice. Since then, even preachers will have good advice. Sometimes Christianity has good advice. There's good advice all over the place. The problem with good advice is that very, very few people practice that good advice just in the point of time when they need it most. Why is that? Why? Well, because they haven't been practicing that good advice. It's brand new. All it is just a thought form. Meanwhile, I've got all this gut reaction that I'd rather use because it's easier to access. And so I'm going to do the wrong thing. I might not even occur to me to take the good advice that I know would apply to the situation. Mm-hmm. So that's why we need to practice it over and over again. The good advice, the good advice, the good advice, over and over and over again. And what it's going to do is eventually going to replace all of the bad advice so that we can start living in the present moment and behaving the way things are rather than behaving the way things were when we were a child, hoping that it would be better if only somebody comes to help me. This is a major, major change because look at the relationship, for instance, between a lawyer and the client, or between an accountant and his client, or a medical doctor. Always the one up, one down. Now we look at psychology. Same thing, the psychologist and the client. Always a one up, one down relationship. In psychology, the patient pays the psychotherapist. So it's still a one down relationship. But now that the client has paid the therapist, now the therapist and the client have a bit of expectation. Only it's not the same expectation. The client has the expectation, okay, I've been paying you. What am I going to get out of this? And the therapist is saying, you've been paying me all of this money. How can I keep you here paying more money? Maybe I've got to get him a little bit, but I don't want to give him too much. And I certainly don't want to tell him the truth. Because if I tell him the truth, he'll either, one, agree with me, say, thank you very much, doctor, for curing me, and out he walks without actually solving the problem. All he did was take a good close look. Or two, you can tell him what's wrong with him, and he disagrees with you, which means now he's going to storm out. Therefore, psychologists don't tell people what's wrong with them. It's dangerous. It might actually lead to a real cure, and that's not the goal. The goal is to control. That's what all the rites, rules, and rituals have always been about. They call it the golden rule, by the way, not Jesus's golden rule. The golden rule of he who has the goal makes the rules. That's the golden rule. But it's got an older golden rule behind that, and that is he who's making the rules gets the gold. When you look at it like that, Catholic Church, where did they get all the gold? They made the rules. Okay, if that's the case, then you can automatically recognize that the rule makers are not there to make rules to your advantage. If you're going to make rules to your advantage, you've got to make your own rules. Isn't that amazing? You've got to make your own rules. You can't do it according to somebody else. That in fact, what you need instead is a master magician who's going to free you from the lies that you've been told. Hopefully, he's not going to teach you much of anything. He's just going to let you go with freeing you from the other stuff. That's what the Buddha is all about anyway, is freedom. Freedom from all the junk we carry around, mental and otherwise. Freedom from the lies we've been told, called rites, rules, rituals, and other things like that. And there comes a time in practice when we begin to actually get that. Right now, it's just really curious information for you. I'm going to have to think about this. I'm going to have to look into it. But very soon in your practice, you're going to come to the point of saying, oh no, it really is my job. I really am in boss of this house. This is my work to do, and I'm going to have a party at it. That is actually when we come to understand the second noble truth. The second noble truth is all about the cause of suffering is my own damn fault. That's the cause of suffering. I'm causing my own suffering. And I'm doing it because I like things. I'm doing it because I don't like things. I'm doing it because I don't know how to feel about things that I like or don't like. I'm not sure anymore. And there's also the fact that many times I don't even know how I feel at all. This is ignorance. This is the second noble truth, Lobha Moha Dosa. I like it. I like it. I really like it, therefore I want it. Now it's mine. And that's grasping and clinging. That's the way that the mind works. And the part of the job that we're going to do through this investigation is take a deep, close look at actually how the mind works. And much of what I've said today is introduction into how the mind works. But basically, we can say how the mind works is like this. It's a series of events. It's a chain of events. When this happened, it kicks off that. When that happens, it kicks off this. When this happened, it kicks off that. When that happens, we say, wow. When that happens, we say, ouch. When that happens, we say, uh-oh. Okay, so it's always a cause and effect relationship of this follows that, follows that, follows that. This is what we mean by the word paticca samuppada. The other word with it is idiopapajayata, but the idiopapajayata is actually the law itself of cause and effect. Here's something very interesting. The physicists are beginning to understand the nature and reality behind what is the speed of light and why is the speed of light the speed of light. And they're beginning to understand the answers because there's an underlying new law that they haven't figured out yet, but they're getting close to it. And that underlying new law is called causality. Bingo! The Buddha's been screaming about that for the past 2,500 years, Mr. Physicist. Where's your math? But the whole point about this causality is this cause and effect is that the reality that we live in is constant turmoil. It's in constant flux. Everything about it. Microphones go on and off. We just saw it. Wind blowing on the microphone caused it to go off, but only when I spoke. That's crazy. But that's how it's at. So this whole universe is awash in constant motion. It's almost like the Big Bang explosion went off. It's still exploding. The explosion didn't stop. We're part of the explosion that's still happening. It's almost like that much turmoil is going on all the time. And as little children, we come into this turmoil and we say, yikes! And we start trying to make understandings out of it. And by doing so, we begin to make mental maps. But the mental maps that we're making as children. So there's a lot of ignorance built into there. We're going to make maps that often are not appropriate. And we sometimes never correct those maps. And so when it's time then to look at the map, if we're looking at a map that's got bad data on it, we're going to come up with, especially if on the map it says you are here and this is called bad feelings. But that's because we're on the map in the mind instead of in the reality. In the reality, if we're outside, we can process the data correctly and see that, oh no, that old map may be wrong. that when I meet somebody new, the old Matt may say, oh, we don't know whether this guy's friend or foe. We better put on a tough guy attitude. And then we start to let that melt because we recognize, oh no, I don't have to put on a tough guy attitude. I could put on a smiley face instead. And all of a sudden we make a whole lot more friends because that immediate reaction between whether we're afraid or whether we're open is seen instantly by the other observer, and they will match you. People will match each other. It happens within an instant. They get into gear, and oftentimes the gear is disharmony. Is I don't like you because I don't know you, and you don't like me because neither one of us are paying attention. But if we are sharp, this is one of those points in time, in fact, of this is the time for good advice. Whenever we're meeting someone that we don't know, we should take the good advice. Oh, let me stay open and see what's happening in this present moment rather than prejudging this guy based upon any old data at all. So that's the way of looking at it like that. But these are skills that will be developed over time. That just because I'm talking about them, you can nod your head and say, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but I can't do that. Yeah, we know, but this is something that you will begin to see within your own mind. And as you do, then you can start to make the changes. But you got to see it first. And if you have the right skills, then you're actually in that investigation. You want to see this thing, no matter how yucky it is. Aha, I got you. I know you're yucky, but at least I've got you now. And sometimes it even goes like this, that you know there's a mouse in the house, like a cat. The cat knows there's a mouse in the house, doesn't know where the mouse is. But the cat's going to sit there and he's going to watch and he's going to wait and he's going to listen and he's going to look and he's going to see signs of this and that. And he's going to hone in on where that mouse is. And eventually he's going to catch it. This is the investigation of the cat. And this is your job also. You've got to catch that mouse. Only this mouse is not a mouse, it's a monster in the basement. and the basement is that old hard drive that I was talking about, or we also in the Pali, the word is Sankara, the old system, the old maps, the old monsters, the old methods of doing things. We need to stop doing that. And that the more often we're alert and awake and the more often we can see what's going on, then when that stuff starts to rise, we can say, down, boy, that's not the way. Or better still, it doesn't even come up because we're actually processing in the here now. So this is why this system is so effective, is because it keeps talking about doing the right thing, the very good advice that we know to take. But it also has this quality of building that habit up, that it's like a new musical instrument to learn to play. And for people who haven't built any skills, it can be hard. An example of that is people who have been into mathematics and computer science, engineering, they have a set of skills that they can bring in with their logic and their understanding and get the Dhamma really easily. Another group of people who get the Dhamma very easily are musicians, because they understand the quality of practice. To get off by yourself and go over it over and over and over again. Martial artists, they make good students, because if they're not here now, if they're not watching what's going on, they're going to get punched in the face. They got to watch what's happening. So they are already intrinsically in the here now. That's part of the training of the martial arts. And so they wind up making very, very good Dhamma students. So these old skills that we have sometimes are quite valuable. But the important skill that needs to be developed, even for each one of those, is the ability to remember. The musician has to remember to go practice. The martial artist has to remember to watch what's going on around him. That's the way, is to remember. That's sati. So sati plus these other skills. Now, getting back to the idea of having a bad day or other things like that, of recognizing, oh, well, I was feeling good for a while and then I was not, and whatnot. Those things are already there for you to see. And so the question is, how do you get into those states? Rather than waking up that I'm in this state for 3 days now, no, the need to get out of it is quick, to get out of that. How can you get yourself out of a funk? The first thing is to say, okay, here's a funk I'm in. Let's get out. The funk that I'm in is basically that the funk of a victim, and you're a lion. And so you can say, okay, all you have to do is have that attitude to get out, and that attitude enough should be the effort that it takes to get out. The question is, how soon can you recognize that funk? Before it becomes a funk, it's just a niggle. Can you see the niggle? How the things get started. That's the way to look at it. It's almost like grabbing a thread and pulling on it. To follow that stuff. Now, one of the things that I'm talking about here is not psychological archaeologists. Psychological archaeology is not what we're talking about. When I say pull on that string, I'm not talking about pulling on the string in the sense of going down into the past of saying, oh yeah, I remember when my mommy gave me a spanking and I've been an asshole my whole life because of that. Or my favorite, yeah, I remember when Dr. Young picked me up by the heels, held me upside down and beat me on the ass. I started screaming and I didn't shut up for 35 years. No, we're not talking about psychological archaeology. We're talking about pulling the thread of what's happening in the mind right now. Look at this. Now that I see that, I'm going to be on guard for it so that the next time I can see, how did that happen? Look at that chain of cause and effect and start pulling back the chain of causes so that you can see down to the source of it inside of the mind as that's happening right inside the mind. But you don't have the skills to do that yet. So let's develop the skills so that you can bring on sati just as soon as you can. So you start to develop that skill over and over and over again of remembering, of remembering. And in the beginning, the first thing we want to do is develop a sitting practice so that we can sit there alone, quiet, away from the whole world, so nobody knows where we are, or maybe they don't, but they don't care. And we can sit there and start working on this idea of cleaning out the mind right here, right now. And so we watch the breath. And by watching the breath, that's something that we're doing in the moment. It's, you don't watch last year's breath or next month's. It's just one. Right here, right now, by watching the breath, we are in the moment. And by watching how the body breathes is the same thing. And so we can be here comfortable. We can watch the breath, and we're paying attention to the body. We're paying attention to where the touch of the breath is. On a long, deep breath, you can feel the tummy arise. You can feel the diaphragm move. You can feel the chest expand. You can feel even the shoulders rise and fall. And you can feel the touch of the cloth. So these are the things that you can experiment with while you're in the here now. And if the mind wanders away, then our job is to happily bring it back, not grudgingly. It's very much like teaching a puppy how to come when it's called. We're not going to lock it in a cage or tie it up on a tree out there and say, okay, come on, boy. Oh, no. You got to have enthusiasm and gladness, and the puppy's got to want to come, and so the puppy comes, and then we feed him something or we scratch his ears or whatever like that, and that's the training process. So we need to apply that also to the mind so that the mind is going to come back from wherever it was grazing out there last year or last month or whatever, or way off into that other place. We don't go often, but today we did. And we say, come on, boy, come on back. And he said, okay. And he comes back and he throws all of that stuff out, and we come back to this present moment over and over and over and over again. And as we do that, something interesting happens. What interesting happens is that I can do this happen. We see the success of it. We recognize I can do this. I can throw that stuff out of the mind and I can come back to this present moment. And wow, isn't that nice? Because all of that stuff stinks anyway. And so we begin to have the joy and the success, and we begin to have the satisfaction. And we let that build up because we're wanting that as a feeling anyway. So we start to experience that. And by experiencing that, this little thing that we've been talking about occasionally, doubt, starts to erode. The doubt about whether I can do this or not. The doubt about whether I can actually change or not. Because now we've seen it happen enough that we're getting that, let us say, knowledge that I can do. The knowledge that no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can come out of that and come back to this present moment. And this is the basic practice of every meditation teacher that I know, ere they have very many different little techniques. But Vahasi's rising, falling, touching, sitting is exactly the same thing that Goenka is teaching. It's the style. It's almost like everybody who's doing this stuff correctly learns to play the piano, but no one has the same piece of music that they're learning. Everybody, some people are playing jazz. That's kind of the way that I do it. In fact, I have two genres. I go somewhere between full-on symphony and full-on jazz. Other people really like church music, and so that's how they teach the Dhamma. But everybody's got a way of teaching it, but always the quality is you've got to develop these skills to come out of the past into this present moment. And doing that over and over and over again. And when you begin to see that I can do it, I really can. The Buddha calls this the first knowledge. He calls this the first step of Sotapanna. The very first step is the knowledge that no matter how obstructed the mind is with hindrances of past, future, I like this, I want that, all of that stuff, and mainly doubt, because this is the hindrance that's really been bugging us for so long, is what is all of this about, Alfie, is that basic question. And the answer is, dang it, we're going to figure that out. We know how. And so that doubt is eradicated. And through that eradication of doubt comes this knowledge that I can do. And the Buddha calls this knowledge, he calls it noble. He calls it super mundane. He calls it a factor of the path, and he calls it not obtained by ordinary people. 48 minutes and
Yeah, sorry. I'll need to go now because I need to leave right now to get to work on time. Sorry. Is it possible to send the rest by recording?
It should pop up on your screen later today.
Okay,
and you'll be able to get the whole recording.
Sorry, I usually don't work on weekends, but today I had to cover a shift. But
no excuses necessary. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
I'm not your daddy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so where we're talking now is at this level of being able to come back over and over and over again. This is the main quality. And that when we come back, we want to do it bringing back all of the features that bring us to a state of satisfaction, pleasure, being here in this moment, in the here now, and being satisfied with it. This is a good moment. This is good. I like this one. And you keep practicing that over and over and over again. And so we need to get into the habit of doing that in both in sitting meditation and then also doing that off the cushion. And so that's what we'll talk about next time, is how to expand that practice to off the cushion. But it's the same practice, always over and over again, and that is sati arises. And when sati arises, whatever you're doing, you say, time for a deep breath. Time to whatever I was thinking about, let that go, and take a deep breath, and be here now, and enjoy this moment. And do that for 1, 2, 3 breaths, and very nice. You do a really nice one, then that's all it takes. And that gives you a moment of coolness. Over and over and over again, you start to develop that satisfaction, developing that state of coolness over and over and over again. That's what we need to develop. And that state has these 4 qualities. It has the quality you remember to do it. It has the quality that you're doing it in a way you're taking effort to do it, to actually do this. But you're doing it very joyfully, very happily. It's an easy job. There was a song out of the 70s. She's not heavy. He's not heavy. He's my brother. Okay? And so this is not heavy. This is my mind. This is not heavy. Out. Get out. Come back to the present moment. And so you take that right attitude and that right effort and enjoy this present moment and start figuring out ways that you can do this. I've got a ton of them, and I'll share them with you later. A ton of them means they'll fill your day.
I look forward.
All righty. So let us finish this one now, and we'll continue on. Before we end it, do you have a question?
No, not really. I think finding the joy and looking past the present, no, the past, the future, and the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite easy on the cushion. Yeah, there's no problem because that's all I have done. But translating that to daily life, non-cushion practice it's a different beast. But really, the only difference between sitting practice and daily life, it's the amount and kind of distractions.
Exactly. Exactly. And out in the world, there can be a lot of distractions.
Yeah, and that's a difficult part.
Well, here's how to do that right from the very beginning, from the get-go, before you hear my long list of tricks. Do it whenever you can think of it. You can find your own trick.
I have been experimenting a bit,
So whenever this happens, you'll say, "Oh, it's time to have a moment of happiness."
I think this is my piano, so it's me that have to learn to play it. You're not playing it. You can't play it for me.
You can watch me play for a bit, but then you're going to have to sit down and practice yourself. That's exactly right. And the practice is the joy. So whenever there's no joy, recognize that there's no joy here. Let's make some. Aha, I see there's no joy.
I find that the amount of joy is it's how should I say it, inversely proportional to the amount of it's proportional to the amount of letting go. The more I have been able to let go of ideas and thoughts about viewpoints about things.
Yes, that's what we were talking about, the Sankaras, the monsters in the basement, the Silabata Paramasa, or attachment to rites, rules, and rituals. Yes, let each one that you see, let it go happily. Aha, I see that.
It's what I try.
Good. All right, Ronny, we'll see you in about a week or so.
Hopefully, yes. I have it's a difficult schedule, not that easy. It's a small kid, and but I'll try to get in touch.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'll,
Don't make it
I'll
too
do it
hard.
when I can. Anyway, I will find you at least.
Good. Good. All righty. Bye bye.
See you.